I identify as someone who doesn't quit. I stick around. I make it work. And so quitting is very hard for me. What if this is not quitting? What if this is just like choosing you? You're choosing to figure out what you want to do, not putting the company first. And then I was like, can I?
Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, an Arcadia production. This is the show all about how to grow in business, lead with purpose, and live with intention. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends. Okay, so today's guest is one of those people who found herself at a crossroads, the messy middle, as we talk about, and she took a moment to say, wait, what do I actually want? And I feel like a lot of us just blow right by those.
I'm always inspired by those that like actually take a moment and stop and do that. We were kind of at some extent doing that herself, but she just took a hard stop, took a hard turn and was like, you know what, this is not what I want. So I'm going to go do what I want.
Yeah, but she didn't know what she wanted, which I think is the most important part of this conversation. She had it all, a successful job, great title, and then she just left and she wasn't sure what was next.
Yeah. I think the cool part of that story is that she actually found what she wanted, like found her voice, found her community, found her people, eventually found the next big thing. And now she's launching her own thing.
Which is so awesome. Today's guest, if you've seen the thumbnail, is Branca Ballot. She is really an excellent follow on LinkedIn. She talks about ambition, motherhood, letting go of the need to do more, but redefining what success looks like on her terms. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, Branca Ballot. Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Friends with Benefits podcast. Today's episode is going to be such a fun conversation. I can already tell. We have somebody who is just on a wild trajectory, who has built what most of us would consider the utmost successful career and decided to move on to something new. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation and talk about all of the unspoken about things that come along with that, as she has so generously shared on LinkedIn. So Branca, welcome to the show. We're so grateful you're here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation. Got a chance to chat briefly before we started. Already some great connections here. We both have 6 and 4-year-olds, so you got a few parents who are just deep in the thick of it, going to have a great conversation about building today.
Yeah. So excited.
You posted this post on LinkedIn, and I'm not kidding. No less than 4 people sent this post to me, and I was not following you at the time, but they were like, who is this woman and how did she get into my brain? For people who don't follow you yet, they need to. But the premise of this post was 4 months ago, you left a big job and you had nothing lined up. And this was the first time in your life that like the next point in your career wasn't super clear. And you go on to say it still isn't. And I feel like there's so many people in that moment right now, myself being one of them. But let's just start there. Give us kind of the history of what you left and why.
I had a great job at a high growth startup, and I had worked really hard to build a whole team. I love my team. I love everything. But it was Christmas of this past year. I was just like, there's something that wasn't like clicking anymore. And I was head of marketing at that startup. But beyond the founder, the marketer needs to be the most excited person in the company.
That's fair.
I think that that's the order of excitement that it should goes. And I kind of like started finding myself like not being the most excited person anymore. And I'm such an excited person that I usually top the founder on the excitement. And I started finding myself like not being super excited about like some new product things or some new initiatives that we were doing. And I was like, that's so strange because that's not me. Mm-hmm. Like I am the excited person. Maybe this has run its course for me. And it wasn't like any big deal, like people are like, was it like a big drama? Was it like, I'm like, no, it was just like, I was feeling like it was the end of that term. And it was funny because I work with a coach. She's incredible for a really long time now. I think over 15 years and on and off, not all the time. And so she knows me really well. And I was talking to her when I was kind of like having those questions. And she was like, okay, so let's just talk about that. So you're not going to get fired because you do a great job. And so you can either die or quit. Otherwise, this is not
To put it bluntly.
Situation is not going to change. And I had a really hard time like quitting because I identify as someone who doesn't quit. I stick around. I make it work. And so quitting is very hard for me. And so she said, she's a very wise woman, okay? So she said, what if this is not quitting? What if this is just like choosing you? You're choosing to figure out what you want to do, not putting the company first. And then I was like, can I?
Do I have permission?
I was like, how do you do that? Like, and she was like, yes. And but I don't know what I want to do after. And she's like, that's okay. That's part of the process. And I'm a process person also. And I was like, what is the process?
Where's the roadmap?
She's like, well, there is no process. And I'm like, well, that's very scary.
It's not going to work for me.
No. And I was like, okay. So that's the story of quitting and going into the abyss of not knowing what it is. And I can keep going, but like then I went through a phase of like not knowing, and I can expand on that, but I don't know if you want me to go there now or later. So you tell me.
I'm very curious at like, at what point did you give yourself permission to choose you? Because it sounds like that you weren't sure if you could do that. So like, do you have permission to do this? Can I do this? Like, at what point were you like, yeah, it's time to choose me? Like, what was that impetus?
Because there wasn't like something really big, it was like I had to make the decision and just roll with it. And I spoke with my partner, and he's more conservative, you know, and like safer than I am, which is great. You need to have one of those in the couple. And he was like,
We have one of
It's
those
like-
in this relationship.
yeah. And he's like, but don't you want to like stay in the company and figure it out? Like you worked so hard and you've built like this amazing team now that runs really well, you know, and you can kind of like maybe take it easy. I don't want to take it easy. If anything, I want to go harder, you know? I wasn't going to be able to truly figure out as long as I stayed where I was. It's probably one of the scariest things that I've done in my life.
The fact that you realize that you wouldn't be able to figure it out if you stayed where you were. I think a lot of people would just kind of, you know, hunker down, try to figure out, stay while they were in that position. If it's safe, it's secure, whatnot. But figuring out while you step out, I think, is contrary to what most people believe, especially someone who's process oriented.
It is. But I will say, I think a lot of people just cannot afford to do that. You know, I have 2 kids. It doesn't come without like a personal cost, right? Financial cost. And most people cannot do that. And so I think when I actually wrote that post, I got a lot of messages. Like it honestly was for weeks, I got messages from people and they were saying, I so wish I could take time off, but I'm having to power through like a tough job or like a bad situation because I cannot afford to just go on my own and not knowing when I'm going to find a new job, which is like super scary. It's scary on the emotional side, but also on the financial side.
For sure. Yeah. I'm relating to this so much. I just did a similar thing. And you know, in my own head, I was the one that was like, maybe I can just stay in this role while I figure out what's next. But I think there's something even further about that. It's like, I'm projecting here, but I think that you have a similar tenacity. You're driven by action. You're driven by doing. And by staying in a role where I wasn't motivated by that and wasn't doing that, that wasn't being true to who I was. Therefore, I couldn't honor what I wanted to do next because I was acting, if that makes sense. So I think that that's an interesting just point to put out about that decision-making process as well. One thing I want to ask you, I feel like in today's society, what we do, what our jobs are, especially when we come from larger roles like that, is often so tied to our identity. How has that played out for you? Like, for instance, over the last, I don't know, 3 months, it's been really interesting for me to walk into rooms and people say, what do you do? It's a lot harder for me to say, I'm starting my own company than I'm the chief growth officer of this company. Like, the identity in that is, talk about that. Has that been a journey for you?
I'm going to tell you like all the phases of that for me. So I quit and then I had this 1 week of bliss that I would tell everyone, I quit my job. I quit my job.
Same.
I'm unemployed. I'm like, it was 1 week. Okay. It was 1 week. And then I remember the Sunday at the end of that first week of bliss, I freaked out because I was like, what? My partner is going to work tomorrow. My kids are going to school. What am I going to do? And then I freaked out and I was like, I don't know. And then I entered the phase where I call like people would say, what are you doing? I was okay saying I am not working. But then they would say, what do you want to do next? And then my heart would like drop and I would just like, everything would go blank. And I'm like, I don't know. And that was like so scary. And I think that was like probably like a month or two of like this, I don't know. And like my heart would like just stop. So it was very hard. And so to your point, the identity shift from you not having a big job. I started working when I was 13. I've had big jobs since I graduated, like really big, busy jobs. And it was kind of like part of my identity. So not having that, I felt like less. I felt like I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I'm not contributing to society. So it was very hard.
Going back to figuring it all out, right? I want to get into that piece just a bit more. And you've written a little bit about like the messy middle, right? That liminal space between who you were and who you were becoming. What was that season like for you?
It was very hard. I think it was 1 to 2 months of like really, really hard not knowing what I was going to do. And so I kept hearing people saying, it's a process. You just figure it out. And I am a very bad person to just like think on my own. Like I like to talk to people. Like, I think, but I like to talk to people. And so what I did in that time is I reconnected with a bunch of friends. I reconnected with a bunch of people I had worked with. And I started like testing different paths for myself. Like, so some people were like, you should absolutely become like a fractional executive. Like you're going to make more money. You're going to work less. It's going to be amazing. Just go. And then I went and I spoke with like 5 fractional people. And then some were like, it's amazing. Some were like, it's not all roses. Some were like, I love the flexibility. Then I went and talked to other people. They were like advising people. And then I started talking to different CEOs that were looking for someone. And so my process was a lot by like talking to people. And what felt really frustrating to me is like I would go down a little path, like testing a hypothesis. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And by the time I was like at the third thing, I don't want to do this, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, why don't I want to do anything? Why am I not getting excited about anything? And that was another scary point. It was like I don't know what I want to do. And I keep seeing all these great options. And for some reason, they don't excite me. So that was another second tough point. I then started getting like, okay, I gotta figure something out. But I did say I had committed actually to not working for 3 months. So when I quit, so my partner actually told me when I quit, he said, okay, you quit, but like, can you commit to like not working for a little bit? And I said, I'm going to do something better. I'm not going to work until September. And he was like, I cannot believe. And I'm like, not paid work.
Loophole.
I'm like, not paid work. Let's clarify.
2-month mark. I mean, that's still pretty quick. I feel like a lot of people sit in that messy middle, which I love the way it does. That middle gray area is kind of messy. It feels very messy mentally. Apart from talking to people, did you have any exercises like journaling or like spend some time on your own away and just kind of thinking through some things and trying to figure out like what is next for me? Because I feel like a lot of times myself, if I'm talking to people, I'm looking for some sort of confirmation bias, right? But if we're not truly going after that, like what is it that helps us get clarity, helps you get clarity within like something that you can actually do for yourself?
Yeah. So in addition to talking to a lot of people, I read a lot. One of the things is like, we all here in the call, we have young kids. So reading is much harder than it used to.
Absolutely.
Right?
Unless it's a picture book.
Right? Yeah. The picture. Yeah. I read every day. I read a lot of books every day.
I don't know. Does Waldo count as a book?
Yeah. And so I was like, I am going to read. So things that like, I honestly don't do a lot that I ended up really taking the time to do in this messy middle, which were awesome. So one thing is I live in San Diego and we live pretty close to the beach. And so I committed to like for this messy middle walking by the beach, seeing the water every day. Incredible. Then the other thing that I don't do very often is like listening to podcasts. I love podcasts, but I'm like, I never have time to listen to podcasts because I'm always like running and there's always like a child screaming at me or I'm working. So then I started listening to podcasts and I had this like a bunch of podcasts that I wanted to listen to. And that was awesome because I would walk and listen to podcasts. So it was like an amazing marriage. I had books that I wanted to read and I started reading books. I'm actually reading, like looking at a couple that I have here in my bookshelf. So I read one called The 5 Types of Wealth. That was a pretty awesome book that talks about like wealth, not only be financial, but all these other, emotional, physical, etc. So that was awesome. I read a book also called Reboot that was very good. I actually listened to a podcast on Lenny's podcast, and then I read the book. Very good as well. So a lot of these books, they were like very much about this phase that I was. And some of them had like frameworks for you to do exercises and stuff. And I did some of the exercises. Like I had a notebook that I would do some of the exercises and all that. What I hate about it is when people talk about the messy middle, they all look like glowy and happy and like, ooh. But it was like very tough. And I'll be super transparent. My coach, the one that I talked about already, she gave me an exercise called Ikigai. It's like this exercise about finding like what matters to you, like what you're supposed to do in this next phase of your life, right? And there's a part of the exercise that starts with like, what are you good at? And it's like, if you don't know, ask people. And I was in such a bad place that I texted my friend, my family, my friends, the people had worked with me, and they would say good things about me. And I would read what they said and I would cry and be like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like, this is not true. And like all these like good things about me coming from these people that know me supposedly really well. And I would discount everything because I was in this bad place of like not knowing what I wanted to do. So I discarded everything that people said about me. So it's not all roses. So I want to just make sure that people know that.
Do you think that not knowing what you wanted to do, being in a bad place because of that, was you didn't know how to fit into the world without that title and identity around yourself?
I think a lot of it was that.
Has that changed?
Yes.
I mean, you're now building your own company, but you didn't like go just replace that identity with a new title. Like, talk about that journey. How did you come to that?
It started happening before. So there's one personal thing I'll share here. One of my sisters had a very complicated pregnancy. While I was in the messy middle, I was able to fly to Brazil and to spend time with her. She had to be hospitalized for like 30, 40 days. That was like one big turning point for me because it was me being able to like be there for someone that had nothing to do with what I do for work. And that to me was like, oh, I do have a place in the world. I can do good, not only being a mom and, like a partner, but I can also be like a sister and like supportive to my mom who was going through this as well as a mom who's seeing her daughter going through something tough. And then I was like, oh, me not knowing what I want to do for my career, that's such a detail. And that put a lot of things in perspective for me.
It's interesting the things that can actually become turning points if you like sort of like respect those points, those opportunities and times. Right? You're going through a phase where you're trying to figure out like what do you want to do, what you're good at, which also I love the fact that, and I think it's something safe for listeners to hear is that you were a very high performing marketing leader, great growth trajectory, great growth in your career, your team, company, product, etc. But you're still asking like, what do you guys think I'm good at? I would like to hear what people see, even though like from the outside, from, our perspective, if we knew them, like, oh yeah, she's got the world at her hands right now. She's lassoed it. She's on that trajectory. She's following it. But at the same time, you're like, what am I good at? And then you're asking yourself that question. There comes an opportunity for you to kind of realize and respect the time in your life where you're like, this is where I see the path beginning to open up to me. And I think if more folks were, vulnerable enough to ask themselves those types of questions, and B, put themselves like in a position where they can see where they're at, like I think a lot of more folks would find themselves out of that messy middle. And I have to imagine there's a lot of us listening that find ourselves in that messy middle. One of the things I recall that you wrote was doing more used to be your superpower. Like just sheer, I guess, from part of doing more, just busy, adding on, tacking on, and seeing more growth, doing more work, and just, staying busy. But obviously that changed. What happened in you that made you see it differently?
I think that like now that I'm starting a business, I have my entire life, I've been that person that I'm like, I can just push harder. I can just do more. And like, I will just overcome anything by just doing more, right? And
Yeah.
working harder. What I find very different now is defining like the things that I want to focus on versus trying to do like 10 things at the same time. And what I found in my entire career and now in my life is if I'm trying to like be the best friend for people, to build a company and to help people build their own companies and to like be a good mom and do this and do that, there's just like so much that you can be good at the same time and enjoy the process, right? Because it's not just about like being good. It's also about like enjoying the process and enjoying life. And I think that like one of the things that I really focused in this time that I was off work was like, I felt like I was doing too much at home, too much work stuff, even though it was unrelated to my one job or whatever. And I started saying like, I am going to have to cut whole categories of things. And I'll just say, that doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. I don't work less. I actually work a lot more now, hours, but I feel way more focused. And so I think that like before I was very much like, I can do more. I can do more. I can do this thing and that thing. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to do fewer things. I might work harder on them, but I do fewer things.
Can you give us an example of those categories and like how you've gone through that process?
So for example, in this messy middle, I was talking to a lot of companies that wanted to hire me. And for a month or two, I'm talking to you, but I'm also like exploring starting my own company on the side. I would tell them that. And then I gave myself September to like figure out if I was going to go all in on this company or not. And then by the end of the month, I was like, yes, I'm going to try to do it. Who knows? I then said, I'm not talking to any company anymore. People can try to hire me. They can say, great opportunity. I'm like, not talking to people anymore. The money might be good. I have no income right now, but that is not happening. That was like a big thing. And it was taking a lot of my time because I was talking to like a lot of people. The other thing is like house and family stuff. There were some projects that we were doing as a family that they weren't urgent and stuff. And I said, we're pausing it. And then my partner's like, are you sure? I'm like, we have to. Like we are at a time where we need to like refocus and recenter. And then also in the day-to-day routine, a lot of things like we've changed as well in terms of like what I was going to stop doing or we were going to stop doing altogether as a family. We reviewed like kids' activities because it was getting out of control. Yeah. So totally out of control. So there are a lot of decisions like that, big and small, but just to do less, fewer things. I highly recommend it.
This is an interesting parallel, but what do they call it? Life creep or scope? It's not scope creep.
Yeah.
But when you like make more money, you just all of a sudden start spending more money and your budget just gets bigger and all that. I think the same is true for life in general. Like you just have new friends or your kids are now in 12 sports instead of one and you need hobbies and, and then all of a sudden you just look up and you're like, what are we doing? It's rare that you take the opportunity to pause and say, do I want to do all this? Do we have to do all this? And again, give yourself permission to own your life in all aspects and say, we don't have to do any of this. You kind of alluded to it here, but let's talk about this business and who you're building it for.
I haven't announced it yet, but I am going to go ahead and give as much as I can here.
Nice.
Okay.
Breaking here on the podcast.
In the messy middle, a good friend of mine, I had a few phone calls with him. And at some point he was like, Branca, this whole self-pity thing does not suit you.
That's a good friend.
Yeah. He's like, you got to snap out of it. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a good thing. And he said like, you know what? Why don't you do this? Go think about like a business that you want to start. Don't think about constraints, anything. Just go think about a business you want to start. If you want to start something and just like think about it. And I was like, okay. Do that. I was like, that sounds like a very easy exercise. And then I went to take a shower. It's a true story. And then in this shower, I had this whole idea of like this business and something. And I was like, I don't know if it exists in this way, but like, I was like, it sounds like something that I would really like enjoy building and like enjoy doing. And it's for busy women. The idea is targeting busy women, working women, busy moms. When I envisioned it, it was for women in mind, right?
You can relate to that.
Yeah. The next week, I actually had a call with a CMO who I worked for, and she is incredible. She is so creative. She is kind. She is smart. She has 3 kids. I don't know how she does it. And so I was talking to her, and, I was crying because I was in the messy middle. So there was a lot of crying. And I was talking to her, and she's like, Branca, you can do anything you want. You just have to choose. She's like, but it sounds like you have a lot going on in your personal life. And she told me about, when her kids were young, the age of my kids, that how they organize with her husband and having help and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, she's right. I probably need more help. But I hung up the phone and I got really pissed because it was one of these things that is like, money is going to solve this. I don't come from money at all. I was born and raised in Brazil. Like, we didn't have a lot of money. Like, we always rented, I got scholarships for college. So like, I don't identify as someone who has money. It's not in my DNA. And so what pissed me off about that conversation was I'm going through all this as a working woman who has young children. And the solution is just like, let's put more money to solve this. And I was like, what happens to all the women that don't have the money to put towards this? Do they just keep suffering? I was like, that does not sound like a good future. And so that's the problem that I'm trying to solve. What I'm building is like a technology thing first. It's not supposed to be just that. And I don't think that just technology can solve this. I don't think it is. The other thing that kind of like motivated me to do this is in the summer when I was talking to a lot of companies, a lot of legal AI startups came talk to me. I don't know why. I don't have any background in legal. But in doing research before I spoke with the first one, I learned that there's 270 startups focusing on legal AI, different aspects of legal AI, making attorneys more efficient, whether they're in-house, in firms, family law, etc. When I had this idea, I was like, who is focusing on this other really big job that we have as parents and as humans, which is like our personal life, our life as parents? There are not 270 startups trying to do that. And now there's so much technology going into making people more efficient at work. And what about like all of this other stuff that we do that is as real as work? Like all of this like mental load that we're carrying, all of the things that we are just like constantly thinking about. And then the answer is, suck it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You will always be a mom. You will always be a partner, and your job will change.
Yes.
Who knows, 20 times throughout your career, yet we give all of it to that.
And then I'll tell you one more thing that got me really pissed. This whole thing comes from a lot of emotion. So then I talked to some guys who are kind of like more like builders and like into like more AI and stuff. And then I said what I wanted to build. And then they looked at me and they said, that is too hard. And then I said, that's what women do every day.
Without technology.
Without technology.
So at its core, are you trying to bring a product about that helps, at its central, like women lead more balanced lives?
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that stemmed from like where you came from in your work and where you're at. Like, what do you... I'm trying to ask a question that doesn't give away too much of what you're building, right?
It's okay. And people will know very soon.
What do you see it takes to kind of live more of that balanced life? And how do you believe technology can be a part that helps solve that?
So what I believe a lot from my experience, and by now I have interviewed like 70 women already on this topic as like part of this building this product. What I hear time and time again, it's like, it's all in our brain. We feel like we don't have a place to put these things. And sometimes we put it in different places. We put it in a notes app. We put it somewhere in a reminder. We put it in the calendar. We write it on a Post-it note. We write it on somewhere. And all we're trying to do is like take the thing from the brain somewhere so we can kind of like rest the brain, right? Because the brain never stops. I was talking to one of the many women that I interviewed, and she's like, the way I feel, she was saying, it's like, I don't have a choice. She's like, I feel like everyone else in my family has a choice to let something drop. But she's like, I feel like I am the last thing. And if someone forgets to buy milk, organic or not, like, she's like, I'm going to have to be the one buying milk because then people are not going to have milk to drink. And she's like, if we don't have toilet paper or if we don't pay for insurance. And she's like, it's this feeling that you're like, you're the last thing and you have no support in that, right? A lot of the women that I spoke with, a lot of them have very supportive partners. Some have partners that work a lot and cannot be as supportive. Some of them are like single moms. Some of them have no children. So like I spoke with like a lot of women. But what was very clear to me is like there's so much going in their brain and they feel like they don't have a partner for their brain.
I was having this conversation with a girlfriend the other day while we were at ballet practice for our daughters. And we both do have very supportive partners. I'll just say that. But it was really interesting to hear her talk. She asked, she said, do you divide up the skills in the house or the tasks in the house, not the skills? And I said, Jason is amazing. A lot of times, this is my story that I'm telling myself. It's easier for me to do it than to hand it off. It's easier for me. And so do you think that, this is getting off topic a little bit, but I am truly curious. Is it a delegation? Do women have a hard time delegating first and foremost? Or is there just too much going on that we can't stop to ask for help?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it's more like the second. I would just say from my experience, and then I can speak about like what I've witnessed with women. My experience is like my entire career, I've been like doing. Then when I had kids, I was like doing. And like my life got so busy with like, it was already busy pre-kids, then got busier with one kid. And then with two kids, it was like mayhem. And because I never took time off to like think about any of this, I just kept like pushing,
piling it on,
going and piling it on. It's like, and it's going to, and I think that it's like, it's so hard because we're not seeing all this stuff that we're doing. We're just doing. We don't even realize sometimes that we can delegate. And so I think, yes, then some of us have time to delegate, right? Like I do have friends who are like, I don't tell my husband to do this because he's not good at cleaning or he's not good at doing this. Like some of it exists, but I think that the biggest issue is like, we don't even know all of that we're doing because we're just doing.
So question, because I think that this translates to the way that we lead our teams as well, like in corporate settings. Do you notice a difference in yourself, or have you noticed a difference in yourself being like the leader of the home and the leader of a team? Are you able to delegate better in a corporate setting?
I feel like my evolution as a leader in my jobs and then as, you know, in my house, they were all very intertwined. There's another book that I often tell people. So I actually didn't have any direct reports until I was 30. Okay. So just for context for people, I started my career in consulting. So you don't really have teams. And then I worked in private equity. So you don't really have teams. And then I got a job at a startup as a very senior, but like an individual contributor. And then my boss was like, you need to have a team to scale yourself. And I was like, I don't see why. I can just do more. I was like, I work so hard. Why would I need a team? And he's like, because you have all of these things, but now you need to scale yourself. And I was like, I do not understand this. And so there's a book that I read in business school. I'm also looking at it. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And one of the things is I clearly was not born this natural leader delegating for people, clearly, right? But I learned, he then gave me a team, 3 people, more people. And then I started like enjoying. Then I actually flipped a switch. My switch was like, how can I actually do great work through people? And then I started like really loving the delegation at work, right? And I always tell people on my team, they're like, when I'm hiring people, they're like, oh, how are you as a manager? Are you a micromanager? I'm like, yes, if you're underperforming. Like if you're doing well, I am not going to be a micromanager. I'm only a micromanager if we're having trouble, which is rare. There was a lot of evolution for me in terms of like learning how to delegate. And it's a pretty new thing, right? If you're until 30, until you have direct reports, like it's relatively new. But yes, it was an acquired skill.
I feel like it's an acquired skill for moms, for women in their personal lives as well, that we don't get the tools, the time, or the training on.
For those partners that may be listening, they're thinking, oh, shoot, I've never thought about it in that sense of how like all that, my wife, my kids' moms, whoever it might be, how much they're actually carrying and having to do and all they think about having to do. Like I would say, like from the two of you's perspective, like what can we say to those partners to better position themselves as a helper to take on some of that load when the wife, mom, whoever might think they have to carry it on themselves? Like from our perspective on this side, like how can we come alongside and be that help to take on some of that load that you don't know how to offload?
I think a lot of it is like observing. I think I show that I'm overwhelmed and I have a lot going on, and it might be like I snap more frequently, or I'm just like not sleeping enough, or there are signs, right, that you can kind of like observe and see
Sure.
what's happening. And then the other thing that you can do is I find I really subscribe to like, I don't think that like two people necessarily should do everything together all the time when it comes to like the house stuff. I think that like if you see, for example, your partner really likes to do like cooking, then you're like, okay, maybe she does the cooking and you do the cleaning. Or she likes to do the garden stuff and you do something else. I think it's a lot about like finding that she will want to do some stuff, right? There's some stuff about our life. It's not all bad, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Raising our
Right.
kids and taking care of our family and our house, it's not all bad. There are things that some people enjoy, right? And there are things that some people do not enjoy. So see the things that like first you would like to do. Some people like to do the dishes. I'd like to do the dishes, right? Because it clears my brain and I'm like there. So like I like that. So like find the things that you like and try to be like, I'll take all of those. That's going to be all of my stuff. And then there's going to be some stuff she likes, and then let her do that stuff. And then there's going to be some stuff in the middle that no one wants to do. Find the balance in that. Figure out if it's like, are you guys going to like fully, you do this, you do that? Is it going to be 3 days a week, 2 days a week? Like find a balance and talk about it. And so I think it's like a lot of like observing. Is your partner feeling stressed? Is your partner feeling like snappy? If that any of these is true, something is off. And then consciously think about this, all that it takes to get a family going. And it's okay for someone to like own like an entire category, but then they shouldn't own all of the categories.
I think it's really interesting because I mean, it started as a business podcast. It's definitely come to the outskirts of that. But everything you just said, like either are or have been or still moving into being really highly professional people. And I think in our daily lives, people just exist. They just, whereas in work, it's like you communicate, you have awareness, and you have expectations. And that shouldn't be different in the other areas of your life. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure and your partner up for failure. Like if I have expectations that like Jason should do the dishes, but I don't communicate that to him and I just get mad when he doesn't help, of course that's going to be a bad situation for everybody. So like, why do we think it's any different than, a work setting of like, okay, our goal is X, here's what we're going to do, and this is the timeline in which we need to do it.
And somehow most of us are not doing this in our personal life.
Correct.
And we go to work and we have all these tools to make us extremely efficient at work. And then when it comes to our house, we're like, do we have a grocery list?
Yeah. Who's in charge here?
When my partner, he goes to the grocery list, like, what do we need again? And I'm like texting him like strawberries, raspberries, blueberries.
Where is
Like,
that in the store?
imagine if I would ever do this at work. Never. I would have put a process on that 5 years ago. It would have been AI optimized. And the whole thing is like snaps at you. And it's kind of like somehow we accept this chaos in life. And we're just like, oh, why do we suffer so much?
I think if we begin to like rephrase or look at it, something like that we're more accustomed to or is more the norm from the work world, it's like, burnout at work is something people talk about a lot. It happens all the time, and it's normal to say, man, I just feel burnt out. But never have I ever heard like I'm burnt out at home.
Because there's no choice.
Right. But
you're right.
This is how we eliminate burnout at home. And I think if you can eliminate burnout at home, you can eliminate a lot of the problems that marriages have, divorces and everything.
Yeah.
And eliminating burnout at home starts at, realizing that maybe my partner is burnt out. And hate to say it, but I think most men are just clueless to the fact at taking, stock of that or being aware of the fact. But if we can get them to the point to where they can acknowledge that and see that, like we have real conversations, manage expectations like we would at work, put process around it, then I think you're eliminating a tremendous amount of burnout at home.
And I'll say, from my observation, my house is pretty, on average, what I hear from other people. Like I tend to be that person doing more of like the daily maintenance. But my partner, he does a lot of it. He does a lot of like the project stuff. If we ever have like a home improvement thing or like taxes or something that is like bigger, he's the one usually taking stock. And the one thing that I will say is we often discount what the other person is doing by a lot, both ways. And I think that like if you don't communicate and if you don't take stock and if you don't understand what the other person does, it's very easy to say, oh, my partner doesn't do all the stuff that I do. But then when you look, you're like, whoa, but they actually do a lot of stuff.
And I don't do all the stuff that they do.
It goes both ways. And, in our relationship, we've learned that it wasn't just me doing a lot. He was doing a lot too. And he was discounting me and I was discounting him. And we were just like, well, that has to end because clearly we're both doing a lot. Mm-hmm. We're just not communicating well. And so it goes both ways.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit here because I think it's so awesome what you're doing. And I think in the age of AI, you're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible for a single human in building a business. So you just finished the Lovable She Hackathon.
Yes.
You shared your journey with us on LinkedIn. So thank you for doing it. I was so jealous I didn't know about it. But you quoted yourself. I quoted you on LinkedIn saying, I can learn. And with AI, I can learn really fast. And I think that that's such an amazing thing. So talk about this because you are not traditionally a technical founder, but you are now building a product and you have gotten it to the point of a prototype, which 10 years ago, wasn't a possibility. So talk us about that. What's this journey been like? What are you learning?
Honestly, it's incredible. Incredible. I am beyond anything I found that I was ever going to be able to do. And I've been marketing technical products for a real long time. Okay. So this is not new to me, but I think that what AI is doing and in the form of Lovable or many other tools that exist out there. I just happened to join the Lovable Hackathon and I think it's one of the great products out there. It's just it gives you a power of developing something that most of us didn't have. Only 1% of the population can code. And so this power is just not possible for many of us. And when I joined the hackathon, I wrote about it on LinkedIn. I saw the hackathon. I sent my application right away. And I was like, I'm never going to get in, but I'm going to send it anyway. And I just filled the application, sent it and said, who knows? Then when I actually had committed to doing my business idea until September 30th to figure it out. In October 1st, I got the confirmation that I was doing the hackathon. And I was like, this is a sign. And so then I did the hackathon and then I was like, okay, I'm going to build my product in this thing. And I did not think I was going to do it. I was like, I'm going to get stuck. I don't know how to do the back end. I don't know how to do this thing. I don't know how to do edge functions. I don't know how to do cron jobs. I didn't even know the name of these things.
I was like, I don't even know what those are. So
I didn't even know the name of these things.
Yeah.
Then I was like, you know what? It's 48 hours. Who cares? This is me against me. It's me against no one. And then I was like, I'm just going to do it. It was honestly the most transformational 48 hours of my life. I felt so powerful at the end. And on top of all that, my partner was out of town, okay, during all of this. And he came back Tuesday at the very end of the hackathon. And he's an engineer. So he comes back, he looks at me, and I'm in my computer, working like a crazy person. He looked at me, he's like, do you need any help? I'm like, no, I'm just fixing my cron job. And he was like, what?
Who are you?
What happened to you? And so I will just say, I've always been excited about technology. And I think that like now more than ever, AI and all the tools people are building, they're making it a lot more accessible. And one of the posts that I wrote this week about is I think women are not taking enough advantage of that. And I think we should, because it's taken so long for people to have more women in STEM, women in like high and leadership positions, women in the workplace. I mean, now we are seeing the gap widen again, right? There's men building AI companies, playing with these tools all the time, and we don't see as many women. And so my pledge, my hope for all of us is just like, please use this technology because it's here for us to help us do whatever we want to do, whether you want to build a business, improve how you run your house, be more creative. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But it's here right now. And I think we should pay more attention to it.
I was telling Jason at lunch the other day, I should have this ready. We'll put this in the show notes. But the woman who won the hackathon, her project is about learning AI, and like I think it's called Recess, right?
AI Recess, yes.
Yeah. I downloaded it and it's very cool because it's like a 3-minute exercise, a 4-minute exercise, and it like just gives you like a snippet of, I like to think of myself as a chat GPT wizard, but that's as far as I've gotten, which like in the age of AI is nothing. And so I think people don't even know how to go to that next step. And so I think the hackathon's amazing because it gives people the confidence to even just like stick their foot in the water and try it. But B, there's so many tools out there, to your point, that can make our lives easier. And we just got to give ourselves the time to do it. So
I'm curious, like talking about like that AI recess and what you're currently using, right? You're now talking about being more focused. Like, talk to us about how you're, apart from building a business, like personally using AI to do all this. Because like, Sam mentioned, like most of ours kind of starts and stops with GPT and that kind of stuff. But like, how are you personally using this to accomplish all that you're doing to now build this life that you want to live?
It's going to sound promotional, but basically the product that I'm building is to help people run their life, right? And it's an AI product. So the way I'm using it is everything I want to do with AI, instead of going and doing it with ChatGPT, I'm basically baking that into my product. And then I use that every day. And so it's like, I'm like, oh, I want to put stuff on my calendar, or I got this from the kids' school, or I have this thing to plan, or I have this other thing to do. I'm basically like going and building straight into the thing, because it gives me like, one is me learning how to use AI, not only for me, but like at scale and for other people to have access to that as well. It's a lot of like really cool things that you can do. There's one of the people that brought to my attention. I think she has a newsletter called AI for Moms. She has some amazing things on like how you can use ChatGPT and AI in your personal life. There are a ton of like really cool ideas.
Love it. As we're looking for the product, what are we going to be looking for from your launch?
I don't know yet when I'm going to launch. I'm really trying to validate to see if like people like it, but you will see it's going to take the form of an app, but it's way more than an app. But the main shape that you're going to see and experience it is going to be like an app form.
Love it.
love it.
Outstanding. Well, this has been super fun. I appreciate you opening up and sharing a few things about your experience. Our one final question that we want to leave our listeners with is what's one thing that you refuse to sacrifice again in this next chapter?
Health.
That's a good answer. Do you feel like you had to sacrifice that back in your do more superpower days?
It was by luck, because I abused my system by how many hours I worked, how much stress I put in my body, how many hours I did not sleep. And so like the reason why I am focused on this now is because I am actually seeing a lot of my friends who are having a lot of health issues right now, same age, same kids, and some of them are somewhat permanent. Sometimes you're like, you go so close to something and you're like, ooh. And I feel like lucky that it didn't happen to me. And I think the reason why I want to focus on health is because it hasn't happened, thank God. But I'm seeing my friends and a lot of things happening to them, and I don't want that to happen to me.
The rest of this doesn't matter if we don't have health.
Yes.
Exactly.
This has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for being a voice in the world, for learning and growing and taking a chance on yourself and all the brave things you're doing. It's certainly been impactful for me. Everybody go follow you on LinkedIn. Is that the best place to stay in contact and kind of learn more about
Yes.
the product? And
That's the only place I'm in these days.
all right. Okay. So go follow her on LinkedIn. Thank you for being here. Friends, I hope you took some time, or I hope you do take some time to take inventory in your life and awareness for those around you, and go for a walk.
And prioritize your health.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Branca, pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
See y'all.